Understand that our work is not done. The investigations are still underway. Part of that includes the interview of the officer who fired the shot yesterday to end the hostage situation, and for that reason, we'll not be releasing his name at this time. We'll start out with our officer-involved shooting investigations. When one of our members is involved in a deadly force encounter like this, we request the assistance of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigations. They've been great partners in these processes, and their role in this instance is to investigate and review the actions of our members and any other subjects involved in the deadly force encounters. In parallel to their investigation, Bluffs Police detectives conduct a criminal investigation into the matters outside those under the review by Iowa DCI. And finally, a second independent review is conducted by the County Attorney's Office. County Attorney Matt Wilbur reviews the physical evidence, videos, photos, reports, statements, and any other evidence that will help him have a clear picture of charging and also whether an officer was within the bounds of the law. All that's compiled and turned over for his review. As in the past practices, we worked through those same processes for this series of events. We appreciate your patience as we walk through this information, and we'll be glad to answer questions at the end of the press conference and provide a copy of this with clarity. We'll mail that out to you, including the booking photo for the subject who has been booked. I'll start out with 2106 6th Avenue. On Sunday, August 4th, at about 5:15, Bluffs officers were dispatched to 2106 6th Avenue to investigate a suspicious death. Further investigation revealed that Jared H. Clark, a 52-year-old male, was found deceased inside the house. Mr. Clark appeared to have died as a result of homicidal violence, in this case a single gunshot wound. The second part of this incident was the attempted murder and pursuit that occurred on yesterday morning. On Wednesday, August 7th at approximately 2:15 a.m., Deputy Ryan Olderog observed a green 1997 Dodge Ram pickup with Iowa plates stopped in the area of County Road L34 and Juniper Road with its headlights off. Deputy Olderog attempted to stop the Dodge for minor traffic violations and suspicious activity. Considered a minor traffic stop to begin with, but the occupants of that vehicle fired shots from the Dodge Ram at Deputy Olderog as it fled from him. Deputy Olderog took evasive action and lost sight of the Ram as it fled south on Juniper Road. At about 2:39 that same morning, Bluffs officers were in the area of Canesville Boulevard and Railroad Avenue, searching for the suspect who had just fired shots at Deputy Olderog. Two more officers identified the vehicle and attempted to stop it. Officers Colby McCord and Tony Fletcher observed the Ram as it was driving in the area. The driver of the Ram fled from both officers onto Indian Hills Drive, while the passenger again began firing shots at officers. One of our crews was hit twice during that portion of the incident. As the Ram drove up the Indian Hills Drive or Indian Hills Road, it lost control and flipped onto its driver's side, passenger side, I apologize. Both occupants stayed inside the vehicle. A male subject, later identified as Troy E. Peterson, a 28-year-old male of Essex, Iowa, and April M. Montello Roberts, a 44-year-old female of Shenandoah, were actively moving inside the vehicle. Officers actively worked to communicate with Peterson using a PA system in an attempt to talk to him. Peterson was holding a black rifle at that time, and he refused to surrender or release Montello Roberts. At about 2:41, a few minutes later, after the vehicle came to rest, Peterson indicated that he was holding Montello Roberts as a hostage. Officers on scene continued to negotiate with Mr. Peterson for the better part of 2 hours. During the negotiations with Peterson, officers attempted to convince him to throw one of the guns out of the truck, which they did release one of the weapons. But at approximately 4:26, Peterson began pointing a firearm at Montello Roberts' head and became more agitated. In an effort to save Montello Roberts' life, a Bluffs officer fired one round from his rifle through the windshield of the Dodge Ram, striking Peterson in the head. The shot incapacitated Peterson, allowing officers to move in and rescue Montello Roberts. After removing her from the vehicle, Montello Roberts was transported to a local hospital for evaluation and treatment of non-life-threatening injuries. Once Montello Roberts was safely removed, Peterson was examined by medics, and they confirmed he was all deceased. I'll jump to 270 Yellow Pole Road in the afternoon of August 7th. At about 12:29, Potawatomi County deputies and council bluffs officers were dispatched to that address to investigate a suspicious death. Upon entering and securing the scene, deputies and officers discovered the resident, Stephen P. Carlson, a 51-year-old male, deceased inside his house. Further investigation revealed that Mr. Carlson died from multiple gunshot wounds. The case connections. One of the critical points of this conference is that each of these incidents began in a vacuum. None of the officers or deputies at Indian Hills incident were aware that Mr. Peterson or Montello Roberts were connected to the Clark homicide, nor were they aware that Peterson and Montello Roberts were involved in the Carlson homicide. It was only through yesterday's case at Indian Hills and the interviews we were able to connect each of these cases. Unfortunately, we learned that Mr. Peterson and Montello Roberts entered 2106, ultimately we learned that they entered 2106 6th Avenue with the intent to rob the victim and ultimately killed him. Evidence and information at that point indicates that Montello Roberts was driving the fleeing vehicle while Peterson fired the shots at Deputy Olderog. During a short time, the deputies and officers lost sight of Peterson and Montello. They forced entry into Mr. Carlson's residence on Yellow Pole and shot and killed him. Unfortunately, we didn't learn about that part of this tragedy until Mr. Carlson's family discovered him later in the day. Officers observed Peterson and Montello Roberts shortly after they fled from Carlson's home. Again, as they shot at officers, striking Officer McCord's parked cruiser twice while attempting to get away. The incident that occurred in the 1400 block of Indian Hills is explained above. Even as they tried to kill Deputy Olderog and attempt to murder Officer McCord, they chose not to surrender. Instead, Peterson took Montello Roberts as a hostage while surrounded by more than 20 officers and deputies. Even as the officers attempted to negotiate with Montello Roberts, Peterson chose to place a rifle under her chin as if preparing to kill her. It was at that point that one of our Council Bluffs emergency services team members fired a single shot, saving Montello Roberts' life and ending the deadly force threat. The officer who fired that shot is a 9-year veteran of our department and has been serving on our SWAT team for 5.5 years. Detectives and crime scene investigators recovered evidence, including multiple loaded firearms during this investigation and from that truck, connected to the Clark and Carlson homicides and in the attempted murders of the officers mentioned earlier. You'll note that we've corrected one fact released in the first press release. Initially, we believed that Peterson was the driver of the Dodge Ram, but that does not appear to be the case at this point. Our investigation later revealed that Montello Roberts was the driver and Peterson fired the shots from the moving pickup. As we mentioned previously, this investigation is still ongoing. Because of this ongoing investigation, we want to ensure that Ms. Montello Roberts preserves her opportunity for a fair trial and will not be releasing any scene photos or video associated with this incident today. Those will wait for trial or when the county attorney otherwise authorizes those releases. You will find attached in your packets when you receive them victim information from each of the incidents, suspect information on Mr. Peterson and on Ms. Montello Roberts. We will add that she was booked last night for 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, 1 count of robbery first degree, and 1 count of burglary first degree. At this time, we'll open up the press conference for a few questions if anyone has one.
Is that packet here?
No, ma'am. We can provide a packet here, but we'll email to everyone on the press release.
What's the motive? Like, have you been able, I know it's part of the investigation, but any idea why and how this all happened?
You've been around a long time and you know that that's the hardest question to answer. We're still working several aspects of this investigation, including outside the county, and trying to pull all that information together. Our hope is to have enough information provided to the county attorney's office so when he prosecutes this case, he can help explain that. But unfortunately, in an instance like this, that's the question that we never get to answer is why.
So they're from Essex and Shenandoah, so they didn't live in Council Bluffs?
No.
What was their relationship?
Great question. We believe it was a, I'm not sure how to describe it, boyfriend, girlfriend, platonic.
Chief,
Yes.
do you
know if it might be, do you have any reason to believe if there's any other bodies or victims involved in this, or do you think you've got it pretty well contained in these 3 incidents?
That's a great question. We believe the community is safe, that these were the only incidents that we're aware of at this point, but anyone that has any information is always welcome to call us, either at the station or through Crime Stoppers with information on these incidents. Yes, ma'am?
Any previous criminal record for both of them?
Yes.
Can I ask what?
I don't have that list in front of me. I would ask you to look at Iowa Courts Online, or I'm confident, I believe Mr. Peterson had a felony record, convictions.
Thank you.
For the record, will this be called a spree killing? Will this have any certain label attached to it once it wraps up?
I'm not sure that there is a label that applies to this. It's a horrible tragedy, is probably the best way to describe it.
Is there anything in particular that made their victims the targets?
We believe there was some relationship between Mr. Clark and the two mentioned, but we know of no known connection to Mr. Carlson at all, and nor why they picked that residence in between the first attempt at traffic stop and 20 to 25 minutes later when they were seen again.
So Montello Roberts, that's her name.
Yes, ma'am.
So at first, there was thought that she might have been a victim in this case, or would you still consider her a victim if he was holding a gun to her head? How would you describe her in this?
That's it. Her role in this incident changed throughout the sequence of events. And like I said, this happened in a vacuum. So the officers who were at the scene on Indian Hills see a male holding a gun to a female's head. We don't have the time or luxury to figure out if she's in a relationship, if they're doing this as a ploy, what's going on. We go on what facts we know in the moment. In that moment, not only did the officer on the rifle confirm that he had a gun to her head, his observer confirmed that there was a gun to her head, and a command officer also confirmed that, and they all agreed that this was a deadly force threat and it was time to take action. The challenge we face is if we didn't take action at that moment, she dies, the question you'd be asking me is, why did we wait so long? So we have to base it on the facts in the moment.
So did you say a ploy?
We don't know. We don't know what the situation was inside the truck. There was conversation back and forth between them. We have video from drone. There was conversation going back and forth, and they were in there for 2 hours. So
And then,
we don't know the conversation they were having.
And you had said they were able to they followed officers' orders and threw one gun out. How many guns did you find in there?
I believe 5. 2 rifles, sawed-off shotgun, and 2 revolvers.
And then she faces a charge of burglary.
First-degree burglary.
What's that connected to?
I'm not sure which case. The Yellow Pole Road incident.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep track of all the addresses.
That's why there's a flow chart and a map.
Okay, good.
The Yellow Pole Road was the incident that we found out about at 12:29, but actually happened in between the first traffic stop and the Indian Hills incident.
12:29 a.m.
Pardon?
12:29 a.m. or p.m.?
PM. Yeah.
Why did it take officers 2 hours to end the threat when, did he have a gun to her head or under her chin for 2 hours straight?
Not the entire time. When we set up on an incident like that, our goal is to get everybody out safely, but the sad fact is the person that controls the level of force that an officer has to use in a situation like that is the suspect. That suspect has the weapon. They can surrender at any time. They could have given up the moment the truck stopped, but they chose not to. And in that instant, our goal is to try and talk to them and calm them down and bring them to a point where they'll actually surrender, but he chose not to do that. And the result of his actions was that he ended up getting killed in the process.
And he died on the scene?
Yes,
Okay, just making sure.
thank you.
And I'm sorry, we're still trying to figure out the relationship to the deceased victims in the case.
We know there is some relationship to the victim on 6th Avenue, Mr. Clark. We are not aware of any connection or relationship whatsoever to Mr. Carlson.
Can you talk more in detail about the relationship with Mr. Clark?
I'm going to save that for trial information. I think that's appropriate to release at that time.
Okay, can you go back to the burglary? I'm sorry, I don't think that got answered.
Which one?
She's charged with burglary. What is that in connection to?
The Yellowtail Road. Yellow Pole, I'm sorry.
The Yellow Pole Road, but what happened there?
They forced entry into a house while armed, and that constitutes a first-degree burglary.
Was anything taken?
That'll come out in the trial information.
Mr. Carlson was killed at Yellow Pole Road. Was anybody else home there?
Not at that time. As I mentioned before, this is an ongoing investigation. The county attorney will have a meeting or a presentation at a later date to discuss the officer-involved shooting. That'll be the next phase of information that gets released. So there'll be more coming out at that point. Other questions?
What was last time that a Council Bluffs police officer had to fire his weapon and take someone's life?
Ooh, I don't know the answer to that one. It's been a number of years since an officer has had to take a life. We've had officer-involved shootings, but not where a subject has died.
I believe it was 2005.
2005 and a half.
Thank you.
Remember what that was?
John Bothwell was shot and killed during an incident at Brewski's drive-through beverage, October of that year.
John Bothwell.
Did the officer shoot with the intention to kill?
No, we shoot with the intent to stop the threat. If the subject dies as a result of that, that's one of the outcomes that's possible. We know that. The goal is to save the life. It's not to kill the person. But if that's the outcome, that's the outcome. That's their choice.
Chief, how many officers were involved in that approximately around the truck that was crashed?
By rough count yesterday, I think it was over 20. And that was deputies from the Potawatomi County Sheriff's Office and our staff.
But
They were
it was
both
a-
on scene.
But it was a Council Bluffs officer who took that shot?
Yes, sir.
And I'm sorry, I missed it. She's charged with murder.
Yes,
2 counts of murder.
yes.
2 attempted, 1 burglary, and what was the other?
The 2 attempted murders are for the law enforcement officers. The murders are for Mr. Clark and Mr. Carlson.
And then what other count?
Robbery,
Robbery.
robbery first degree.
So I've heard this described as a Bonnie and Clyde situation. Would you go there?
To be honest, Michelle, I hope we don't mention their names ever again, and I don't want that kind of notoriety. We focus so much on suspects anymore that we forget about the victims, and to me, this is a tragedy. If you all left here today and never mentioned their names, I'd be much happier.
Can you tell us about the victims? Anything to share about them?
I don't, my fear about going too much further into that is I don't want to compromise her opportunity for a fair trial, and I don't want it to have to move to another jurisdiction to make that happen. So I'll stop with my feelings on that at this point.
I mean, like family men, fathers?
We know that each of them has family. Unfortunately, Mr. Carlson was found by his fiance. We just met with Mr. Clark's family this morning to let them know what's going on in the case. Anytime an incident like this happens where it's a critical incident, lives are changed forever. Whether you're the victim of that incident or the officers involved, it's never the same. And we have to remember that. The focus should be on healing for them and healing for the officers and helping them get back to work and back to what is now the new cop normal, as opposed to focusing on these suspects who've done this.
So what happens with your focusing on the deputies and the officers? What are you doing now?
A couple of things. First thing we're going to do is the officers that were directly involved have the opportunity to speak with psychologists. They'll do sit down and have a conference with them, talk about the process, and working through this process. I've been in touch with both the officers that were directly involved in this. They're doing well, and they're going to come back to work. They'll be fine. Fine's the wrong word. They're going to be okay. Now, on top of that, we're going to do a couple of debriefs for the people that were directly involved to make sure that they understand the whole picture, because there are only a few of us that have been to the whole, that have been exposed to the whole picture, to give them a chance to connect dots and to recover. And then we'll monitor them. The opportunity for mental health services are always available, and we're going to support them. They're part of the family.
Can you talk about every single agency involved in this investigation?
Those that I've mentioned already are the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, the Potawatomi County Sheriff's Office, our department, Page County and Shenandoah Police, Page County Sheriff's Office, Shenandoah Police. Am I missing anyone at this point? ATF is in support of us. They're helping us with the traces on the firearms that were recovered. I mean, this is just, it's still growing. What we saw early on is the tip of the iceberg, and now we have to do the investigative part to bring it all together.
And I have one more question that's a little unrelated. So you said that they're not from here. So they came here strictly to commit the crimes. What were they doing in Council Bluffs?
That's another why and what question we don't have the answer to. We don't understand. Sometimes people come to metro areas or towns because it's There's a more opportunity, there's more houses, more places to target. In general, I can't give you that answer, but I have a good one.
When will Montella Roberts make her first bail hearing?
She's appearing in court this morning.
She has already?
She probably is appearing as we speak.
And where was she from?
Originally from Shenandoah, she was staying in Essex with Mr. Peterson.
Chief, what was the aha moment here when you finally went, oh my gosh?
Which time? There were several of those. I mean, it's unfolding. It's, a critical incident on Indian Hills, and then we find out about everything that happened before that. And then as we're working through the case and we find out that it's connected to 6th Avenue and then it's connected to Yellow Pole, and it just kept rolling yesterday and getting bigger and bigger. So I don't know if there was any one particular moment. There were several moments that just, we all stood back and said, wow.
So Mr. Clark, who was killed on Sunday,
Yes. No, he was discovered on Sunday. We believe he died on Saturday.
okay, discovered on Sunday, was that an active homicide investigation?
Yes, it was.
Why do you say wow?
It just shocks the conscience that there are people in our community that do things like this. I mean, we see things all the time as law enforcement officers that make us step back and wonder, but when people are randomly picking a house out like this, it doesn't make any sense. Quite often people have some type of connection with victims that are involved in the incident, but this is baffling.
Chief, could you, you've had just a little time to think back here, but could you talk about how you feel your men responded, your men and women responded to the situation?
Well, I'll step back even further than that. This community has always been extremely supportive, both in the city and the county, for public safety and first responders. And we appreciate that very much. And then on top of that, the partnership of the people that are standing here is priceless. The relationships that have been built over the years and the partnerships that exist because we're willing to work together, and jurisdictional boundaries don't matter. It's about the victims and it's about the community that makes a difference. And to me, that's priceless too.
Go ahead. Sorry. I was saying, go back, you said randomly, so do you believe these were random killings and burglary?
When there's no connection to Mr. Carlson, I don't know of any reason why they picked that house at this point.
But Clark, you're still kind of figuring that out.
Correct.
I was just gonna ask, was there any drugs or alcohol found, or do you have any reason to believe that was involved in their crimes or even the truck crash?
We're not going to get to that at this point. We believe there was some drugs involved in the investigation, but we're not going to get any further into it. One more question.
Was that truck registered to Mr. Peterson or Ms. Roberts?
It was registered to his father,
To
Mr. Peterson's father. That's all the questions we're going to take right now. We appreciate you coming. If you have any questions after you've received the press release, Captain Weddle will send that out, and it's already gone, so you should have it in your email. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Make sure we have
Not too much. The mics are still on, so.
I got it right here.
That's what we have, right?